go ahead and make yourself comfortable. Welcome, Allison.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being part of this project. We really appreciate having you here.
I'm really excited for this one.
Let's start by finding out a little bit more about you. Can you let me know a bit about your background, where you're from, where you grew up originally?
Sure. I was raised in a very conservative Catholic family. I went to an all-girls Catholic high school. Um, what else? I'm the oldest of four, and I did just about every sport you could imagine growing up. I mean, I did the soccer, I did softball, the things that your parents put you in, but the sports I enjoyed more, that I stayed in for longer, were like baton twirling, ice skating, dance, cheerleading. I tried swimming at one point. Anything that was like, traditionally athletic wasn't really my forte. So I tried out for track and field once. But yeah, things that were more artsy. I guess I was also I said musical theater, that's not a sport, but just the performing arts, musical theater. I was in band, marching band. I just loved doing things with groups that weren't necessarily like physical, but more performative. I really loved Fucked Hard 18, the massage table with the blue room. I loved that series when I was younger. And one day I was just on their website and I saw the link for Become a Model. I had written up my email for it and they wanted, full frontal photos and all that. And it just kind of sat in my drafts. And then about 3 months later, I was dating this guy. Well, we'd been dating for a minute. I was dating him. We went onto a swingers website and we were trying to meet couples that were similar in age to us. And we met one couple. They were just a couple years older. And when we were getting to know each other, I asked her what she did for a living. And she was like, I'll tell you, but don't freak out. And I was like, do you sell drugs? Like what? And she's like, well, I do porn. And I was like, cool, tell me about it. And she was a student like me. And she told me how she would come out to LA for a week and shoot her butt off, go home, study. And that was just how she made a living and was able to focus on her studies at the same time. Now I was babysitting really like nannying. It's like 5 days a week and trying to study while the kids were taking naps. And it was just exhausting because I was always taking 18 to 21 credits and it was just not working for me. And I was like, that actually sounds great, especially because I had already considered submitting to that website to become a model. So she introduced me to a few agents. I went to the set of Nubiles to see like what goes on set to make sure it was something I'd be comfy with. And I signed with an agent, came out to LA, shot my first 5 scenes and never stopped. I really liked, I just loved how shiny the girls were. And I loved that it was definitely like about her pleasure. I loved that. And also the way his hands looked. I just always wanted somebody to touch me like that and really loosen me up to the point I was so turned on I couldn't help but having sex with them, like being put under a spell or something. I also did like the little bit coercive, exploitative nature of it. I've always thought that was a hot dynamic. So all those things kind of all rolled into one made Fucked Hard 18 like the shit. I had always wanted my boyfriends, like every boyfriend that I can remember, I wanted them to get involved with other girls. I always wanted to watch. I thought it was hot. And they didn't really get it, They were like, And it wasn't that I even had the opportunity to do it. It was just I would encourage them, like, oh, I want to see you flirt with a girl. And they were always kind of shy, or maybe they're just more monogamous than I was. But I, from a very, very early age, knew that I really liked watching and being watched, and that like multiple partner dynamic. It was so long ago. The very first memory I have was, well, one, I was often like humping sides of couches and chairs. And there was a lot of masturbation happening before I ever reached orgasm, before I even knew that it was something that could be done. And I remember like I had a book, and it was like a thin book, and I was humping it and having like really struggling to keep the book upright because it was so tall. And I remember being walked in on by my parents. That's probably my earliest memory of masturbation. And then as I got older, I started playing with objects because I didn't have any dildos to play with at the time. I remember using like a screwdriver. I remember using an unplugged hair straightener. I remember using a hairbrush. I feel like everybody has the hairbrush story. And then eventually it turned into hands. I was like, oh, I can just use my hands. Like that, like I can just do that. I was actually at home. We were messaging on the computer, and he asked me if I'd ever had an orgasm. And I was like, yeah, I think so. And he's like, no, you would definitely know if you had. And I was like, I don't know. And he was like, okay. And I think this is where my submissive side comes in, where I like BDSM. He starts instructing me what to do. And I'm just following his instructions. And he was like, just focus on the feeling. And I did. And I probably had an orgasm in like 2 minutes. It was so fast. And I just remember this like wave of warmth come over me. And I was like, oh, that was definitely it. And when I told him that it had happened, he was like, no, there's no way that it would have happened that fast. I'm like, I'm telling you. And he was like, describe it. And then I just basically told him what I just told you. And it was like, I've been missing out on this, because up until that point, especially like while like, you know, I say humping, it's like grinding, rubbing on those armchairs. Yeah, armchair
arms.
chair arms. I'm like, what? How? What is that word? Chair arms. Up until then, like I remember feeling something, like I could feel something building up, but because I was like holding myself up and then like grinding on it, I would get too tired to go past the buildup. And I just thought that's all there was. And then it would settle down. And then I was like, nope, that was different. That was it. I guess at that point, our brains love to, a self-fulfilling prophecy, a confirmation bias. So I had this belief that I was a slut and that I was worthless. And I took that that belief of myself and started having sex with a lot of people in my younger years. And every time I did, especially when it was people I didn't even necessarily really want to be having sex with, it just reaffirmed that belief that I was a whore and a slut. And when I got into this industry, again, it was like reaffirming that belief within myself. And it did have an impact on my mental health for a while. And through years of therapy, I've started to realize that it was the only way I could kind of reclaim my sexuality as my own, by being surrounded by a lot of people who accept me as I am and see my urges and desires as very normal and desirable even. You know, the fans have really uh, encouraged me to be myself. And that wasn't something that I had in the past, as people who accepted me and accepted my sexuality as it was. And I'd say like that's been the biggest evolution to my sexuality, is being accepted so that I could accept myself. Definitely try to take care of my body in terms of like eating lots of whole foods, fruits, veggies. I try to hydrate. I'm not as good at it as I would like to be, but I'm working on it. I take fenugreek because I like smelling nice for anybody I'm having sex with. I get tested regularly, almost every 2 weeks. I'm not always working, but if I'm engaging with somebody, I am making sure that I was tested within the last 2 weeks. I only sleep with partners who have also been recently tested, or if they haven't been tested within the last 2 weeks, I always require condoms because my health is very important to me. I also like, you know, if I am feeling a little something, because I am kind of prone to like yeast infections or bacterial vaginosis, I will do a boric acid tablet, suppository, not a tablet. Don't put it in your mouth. Suppository, pretty much every time I have sex with somebody. Just because, you know, it's somebody else's like cells and your body has to process it. And I just feel like it really helps kind of keep me balanced. It is a lot more rare than I would like it to be because I've been taking SSRIs for the last 3 or 4 years. And for anybody who's not on antidepressants, you might not know how much it impacts your libido. And not just your libido, but your ability to have an orgasm. So I am very rarely masturbating for myself, unless it's for my content. I have a much easier time orgasming with a partner because there's like an energy exchange there. And I get turned on by giving pleasure. So there's that aspect to it where I can enjoy it. But I would say, in terms of masturbating, I might masturbate like once a month. And that's usually like when I'm ovulating and like actually feeling really horny. But the rest of the month, my libido is so like flatlined, which can make my job a little bit harder to do. But there are a few things that I do to help that. And for anybody who's on SSRIs or similar medications that might make it hard for them to have an orgasm, there are supplements that can really help your libido. I would also highly recommend talking to your psychiatrist. Before I was just on SSRIs, and then he added Wellbutrin. And Wellbutrin can actually help with the sexual side effects of an SSRI, like Lexapro, Celexa, Zoloft. The other thing is, like I said, those supplements. Catuaba can be great. It helps with your blood flow. And those are the things that you really need in order to like help yourself achieve orgasm. Shame is a really hard thing to overcome. And I personally can understand that it is very difficult to allow yourself to feel your natural urges when everything you've ever been taught says not to. I highly, highly recommend therapy. There are some wonderful sex positive psychologists and therapists that would be happy to help you on your journey. And honestly, like if there are just things you're interested in that you're ashamed to tell your partner about, I can almost, I don't want to guarantee anything, but I just feel like guys love a freak. They really do. They're like, yes, she said it, so I don't have to. And it allows them to explore the things they want to explore that they're too afraid to tell you about. So I really hope that you get help if you need it, and just be honest and communicative with your partner, and also don't be afraid to just try things on your own. There's nothing wrong with watching porn of any kind of fetish, anything you're interested in. Just because you're fantasizing about something doesn't mean that you would actually do it in real life either. And really taking ownership of those desires and your body can be so empowering and can help you eventually work through that shame. But sitting in shame is just going to keep you there.
Thank you so much, Allison. I really appreciate you coming down and talking today and being part of Up Close. And now I think we might go do something that we just talked about. So I'll go ahead and have you come off of the stage from your